Hey, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. Today we're just gonna, as I promised, finish reading a chapter of a pretty good book we've been reading for a couple years now. And we've been reading, thoroughly, very thoroughly. We're gonna finish where we left off the other day. Okay. I know we had a pretty good reading. We were getting some pretty good stories, if you like this kind of stuff. Well, thanks for being here. Shout out to everybody who's in the live chat. Appreciate you guys taking the time again, being here live. And again, this is the playlist. If you go to my homepage, go to my playlist tab, you'll see one of these playlists is Secret Cities of Ancient South America. A lot of good drop in the previous reviews, readings. And specifically, this is the last video. This was from 5 days ago. That's when we did it. 5 days ago. All right. Secret cities of ancient South America, monstrous beasts of the unexplored swamps and wilds. All right. That was about an hour and 50 minutes long of reading that we did that day. All right. And again, today we're just gonna start off, pick up where we left off. Again, in the book Secret Cities of Old South America by Harold T. Wilkins. Okay. Go to the chapter where we left off again. Let's see. Okay. I know exactly where we were. Okay. So, let's see. One second. Here we go. Okay. Okay, this is where we left off right here. And again, in the previous reading, they were talking about, all the stories in the Amazon, but not only in the Amazon, in different parts of the Americas. He mentions a lot of the other stuff and the other parts of the world just to compare. Usually in this book, he stays in South America, but in this chapter, he's gone all over the Americas. As we see right here, we're going to continue where he was talking about, he was a lot of mastodons and elephants and humans living with elephants and deposits that are very, very, very old, you know, and that's what we were talking about, and we left off right there. We're gonna pick it up right here now. Appreciate you guys again taking the time to be here. All right. It says in North America, there have been one famous American, some French explorers, and one old English roamer who have contended that so-called fabulous unicorn, whose figure appears in the royal coat of arms of the kings of England and Empire, have actually existed in quite modern times in what is now the United States of America. This perhaps not so fabulous animal has a very long and distinguished history. For 2,394 years ago, the great Greek historian and geographer Herodotus called him the horned ass of Asia. Ctesias, a century or so later, says he is the wild ass of Hindostan, with a cubit long, about 22 inches, straight horn on the forehead, the tip red in the middle back, and the end of the horn white. Drinking cups made of this horn were supposed to be an antidote to poisoned drinks. Ctesias says that unicorn is fleet of foot, untamable, and that it is almost impossible to capture him, which may explain why no Roman emperor, in the most palmy days of the gladiatorial arena in the old Roman Latium, ever loosed one of the captives of the triumph. Julius Caesar in the Bello Gallico, which in the author's far-off days at grammar school used to bore him excessively, says there was a great animal, large as an ox, in the dense forests of Hircania, southeast end of the Caspian Sea, which had a single straight horn in the middle of the forehead, which horn was straighter than any horn he knew. Plinius Secundus says he is a ferocious beast with the body of a horse, a deer's head, elephant-like feet, tail of a wild boar, and a single black horn, 2 cubits, 3 feet 8 inches long, in his forehead. The British Museum of Natural History, London, England, has a horn from Africa, which is unlike the horn of the rhinoceros, which is narrow at the base and very long and heavy. This strange horn is flexible. Is it that of a unicorn? Yeah, I know that, some of the writings, a lot of these people are describing rhinoceros, they say. But as he's saying right here, they have a horn that didn't look nothing like the rhino. That's what he's saying right here. It says now the story of the first real or alleged contact with the unicorn of North America was told by David Ingram, an English sailor, who in the years 1568 to 1569 traveled from the Rio de las Minas on the Gulf of Mexico or the Red Sea, the real Red Sea, red, right up to the coast was what is now eastern United States to Cape Breton and Acadia. We just had in a video about the Acadians yesterday, right? Modern Nova Scotia. His relation of the journey is exceedingly rare and does not figure even in the unrivaled library of the British Museum. It was reprinted in an also very rare book by Colonel Charles Jennett Weston as a document concerned with the history of South Carolina. All right, so, one thing is, people in the other side of the world describing what may be a rhino. Well, how about in the Americas? We ain't supposed to have rhinos at all. So is it a rhino or a unicorn? Could be both. Says Ingram, who traveled with 2 other English sailors, either castaways from a wreck or men fleeing the tortures of the Spanish Inquisition, of the Black or Dominican monks in Mexico, says the expedition did also see in those countries a monstrous beast, twice as big as a horse, both in mane, hoof or hoofs, ears, hair, and nyangy, savagey. It was towards the hinder part like a greyhound. These beasts have 2 teeth or horns of a foot long, growing straight further of their nostrils. They are natural enemies to the horse. He did also see in that country both elephants and unces. You guys hear what it's saying? They saw what? Elephants? Talking about unicorns or something with horns? Talking about dragons? What we talking about? Unces? What's that? This English right here is a little weird. And one other strange beast, bigger than a bear, yet had neither head nor neck. His eyes and mouth were in his breast. What? Oh, these are the creatures with the eyes and the mouth and the chest, huh? This beast is very ugly to behold and cowardly of kind, yet bears very fine skin like a rattle, full of silver hair. Huh. Ingram and his pals undertook an exceedingly dangerous and adventurous trip at a time when almost nothing was known of the vast stretch of territory from the Gulf of Mexico, past Florida, up to what are now Maine and Nova Scotia, far north. Probably beyond New York State, he entered an elusive country marked on the spouting dolphin and amorous mermaid maps of the cosmographers of the late 16th century as Norumbega. All right, again, Norumbega is a real place. It was here of these Scandinavian sagas, which may be a goblin of Norway, and is located about the region of Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. But we hear again of the North American unicorn in 1719, as found round the middle course of the Red River of Louisiana, Red River, Colorado, by the expedition of the French explorer Bernard de la Harpe. The Frenchmen joined a party of Nadish Indians who near the confluence of the Washita probably the false Wachita in the old Indian territory, were roasting unicorns. What? Laharp says that the unicorns were the size of a common horse, with reddish hair as long as the hair of a goat, legs rather thin, and a single horn in the middle of the forehead, which does not branch out into prongs or tines, and its meat is very palatable. He adds, this discovery agrees very well with what Monsieur de Bienville heard from the savages that on the upper Wichita River unicorns were to be found. Wow. Huh. It will be noted that La Harpe's description fits in with what Pliny and Aristotle said of the unicorn and does not agree with the shape and appearance of the buffalo or North American bison. But an even more mysterious North American beast of gigantic size and unexampled ferocity in the is the megalonyx, of which thrilling stories were told in the 18th century. The spotlight was thrown on this monster by no less a personage than President Thomas Jefferson. In 1799, in the Transactions of the American Philosophical Society, Jefferson said that in the west part of Virginia, in a cave in 1797, laborers dug up at a depth of 2 to 3 feet the bones of an unknown clawed animal. The earth was nitrous, and the bones those of unguiculated clawed, quadruped, the lion being his nearest in size, but the monster was around 3 times the size of the African Leo Felis lion. Jefferson gave some interesting comparative measurements. So here's the megalonyx, right? The claw 7.5 inches, a lion 1.4 inches, a lot longer, all right, a lot bigger. There were traditions that the early adventurers in the country of Greenbrier, Virginia, were alarmed in the night at their camp by the appalling roaring of some beast unknown to them. The monster went around and around their camp, and they saw his eyes shine like 2 balls of fire in the light of the camp blaze. They piled on the logs to make a blaze that would keep him off. So terrified were their horses that they crouched down on the earth, and their dogs crept in among the scared men, not daring even to bark. So frightened were the men that the next day they packed up and quitted the territory. This adventure seems to have happened around the year 1765. In the same year, 1765, George Wilson and John Davies went on a hunting trip to the Cheat River, a branch of the Monongahela in western Virginia. One night they heard, some way off their camp, a tremendous roar, which became louder till it reverberated among the rocks and in the aisles of the forest like thunder. The very earth seemed to tremble. Their dogs prowled around their camp, though at other times they were very fierce. But now they crept close to the men's feet and would neither quit the camp nor bark. About the same time, the hunters heard the same roars repeated from the top of a mountain a mile off, and within a mile the roar was answered by a similar roar coming from a neighboring height. It would seem that these hunters deemed discretion the better part of valor, for they did not try to trail one of the monsters and add his pelt to cover their bedroom floors way back in the old home township. Wilson told the story of Colonel John Stewart in 1769, who was later a lieutenant colonel in a Penna regiment, fighting in the War of Revolution against that unrivaled idiot and demented imbecile German Hanoverian George III of England. That's what he thought, this guy, right? That's funny, the author, right? Some years later, the other Hunter Davies, who was alive in Kentucky, as late as 1799, also spilled the beans about the fearsome night in old Virginia. As in South Africa, dogs are said to behave in this way when lions are about in the night hours. A third hunter named Draper had also a personal contact with this monster. When in 1790 he went hunting on the Kanhawa. You see that? Peacekin, Hawa, Kanhawa, or Great Kanawha, Awa River, 650 miles long, which runs from North Carolina and Virginia past the Blue Ridge of North Carolina. Past the Blue Ridge. These are old lands, old mountains, ancient to the Ohio, and is known in Virginia and North Carolina as the New River. Draper turned his horse loose in the wilds and put a bell on his neck so that he could be heard if he strayed far. Hardly had the horse left the camp before Draper heard the bell ringing rapidly and ferociously. Thinking the Indians might be around, Draper went to the scene, but before he arrived, the horse had been half eaten. What? His dog scented the trail of some animal and led Draper farther into the forest. Before long, they came in sight of an animal of such monstrous size that, though Draper was a regular hawkeye of a marksman and a most daring hunter, he at once checked and brought off his dog and beat a hasty and silent retreat. He recalled no more of the monster than that he was in general outline of the cat tribe and had a terrible bulk. Huh. He was a feline, huh? It was not a panther or any animal he knew. Are we talking about Pantera onca still going around? Talking about the large, ancient North American jaguars or lions? It is probable that the monstrous megalonyx of Virginia and North Carolina died out in the early 19th century. Sure, he would have offered rare sport to the railroad engineers pushing the iron road over the Alleghanies in the 40s and 50s of last century. A megalonyx in the caboose or astride the coal bunkers of a locomotive puffing up the grades could hardly have been evicted as easily as a bum riding the rods to avoid paying his fare. It may be added that around the year 1850, Dr. Dixon of Natchez found the pelvic bone of an ancient man alongside the remains of both a megalonyx and a mastodon. That's from the Vide Journal of the Philadelphia Academy of Science, okay? You guys hear that? Megalonyx. All right, megalonyx. Megalonyx. Just see what they're talking about, right? Megalonyx, huh? That's what they're talking about. That's like a giant sloth, but not really. It's like a bear sloth, giant. That's what they're talking about, huh? I think these animals were more herbivores, not meat eaters, but hey, maybe they're talking about something else. So it says, to sum up, I think my reader will agree that I have given in this chapter enough data to shake any preconceived notions that all we know of the mysterious past of the world in general and North America in particular has been put within the pages of the latest book on zoology or biology. There must still be within the secret places on the earth, below the earth, and in the waters under the earth, many things of which science has yet to take cognizance. We do not know the half of it yet. Remember the Komodo dragon? For example, his existence in the islands of Flores and Sumbawi was ridiculed as a jest and hoax till one day an American came along, captured some of the young dragons, and shipped them on board a liner bound for New York City, where they were placed in the zoo park. The moral is, be not too cocksure of anything in this mysterious world of ours, all right? Now, it is a curious fact that certain red Indian tribes of North America asserted as late as the early years of the 19th century that the mammoth, a species of extinct elephant closely akin to the mastodon, the structure of whose teeth differs from those of the mammoth, still exists in certain remote mountain country in northern or western America. Listen, whether or not this is ancestral memory cannot now be affirmed. And it says, see President Jefferson's notes on the state of Virginia. That's what he was writing, that the Indians were telling him. All right. Now, apart from the megalonyx, what's the significance that it was found with a human bone? Well, they were supposed to be extinct a long time ago. They weren't supposed to be around with humans. You get what I'm saying? So that itself, is telling you something. says mammoth meat, thousands of years old, has been quite recently eaten, listen, at Soviet banquets in Moscow. Russian chefs have found that the meat was firm and fresh, even after thousands of years immersion in frozen mud. The Russian journal Izvestia and the USSR Academy of Science said that steaks from the mammoth were served at a banquet, and with the characteristic Soviet Russian exploitation of old Russian proletarian and Mujik superstition rings were made from the thick dark fur of the mammoth and sold as good luck amulets and charms in aid of the funds of scientific bodies. Man. So remember, this book is written still in the times when the USSR and all that still exists, right? It says one man at one of these Moscow banquets even suggested that the Arctic could be used to store surplus grain, also meats, fats, and carbohydrates, while grain could be kept there for 50 years and resown or eaten. But that is another story more concerned, perhaps with the next war to end war, than with the subject of this book. What? In North America, the mastodon and the mammoth occur in strata much more recent in date than in Europe or Asia. Dodge the hijack, and very well preserved. In California, human bones and ancient stone tools have been found in gold-bearing strata, along with mastodon and other ancient mammalian remains. Near Silver Lake, Oregon, mastodon bones were found mixed with flint arrowheads and spearheads, while in Mexico City in 1884, a human skeleton was found embedded in calcareous deposits along with elephant bones. All right, people with elephants here in America, the beds in California where these mastodon bones were found must be extremely ancient, since great beds of lava cover the gold, and water has cut canyons through these lava beds, denoting the onrush of a great cataclysm that fell on ancient America thousands of years back. Uh-oh, Atlantis. Uh-oh, the Great Flood. President Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1797 that the mammoth may still exist in the unexplored regions of the northern and western parts of America. Now, as formerly he did, where we find his bones. Jefferson's opinion is also held by modern trappers in the Yukon and Alaska and in the Canadian Northwest Territory, who say that both mammoths and mastodons are alive at this day in the remote recesses of the Rockies. Huh. The mammoth was certainly not unknown to the ancient artists and sculptors in Maya Yucatan and Nahua Aztecan Mexico, ages before the conquest of Cortez. Walde gives a picture of a bas relief in the ancient palace of Palenque, which depicts a proboscidean, all right, a proboscidean, the ancestor of all elephants, which the bones of the proboscidean were found all over the Americas. That you can go check out my video on that. I have a video on what they're talking about right now, showing exactly what they're talking about. A proboscidean, it is part of a headdress and contains a trunk and a tusk with a horn above the tusk. Also, the savant Baron Wilhelm von Humboldt describes a trunk of an elephant in an ancient headdress at Aztlan, which shows that their traditions reach back to the time of the American elephant. All right, all right. Dr. Adam Clark weighed a presumed grinder of a mammoth found in a cave in Kentucky around 1830, and its weight was 4 pounds, 8 ounces. He weighed a modern elephant's grinder, and it was only 2 pounds. He computed the size of a mammoth as equal to those of 2¼ Asiatic modern elephants, all right? A lot bigger. Joshua Priest, about that time, visualized a herd of mammoths nibbling a forest of trees and says that the whole western continent would prove a small enough pasture ground for a moderate herd of mammoths or just elephants, ancient American elephants. Don't always think the hairy ones. We had all types of different elephants. The prodigious size of the old American mammoth was demonstrated when one of 9 skeletons was dug out of the ground near Shungum Mountain, Ulster County, New York, and put in Paley's Museum. Spafford's Gazetteer of New York says that the other 8 were sent to New York City. It was computed that these mammoths were all of 25 feet high and 60 feet long, the bones of one toe along being more than 3 feet long. Near Maze Lake or Salt Spring, Kentucky, are mammoth wallows close to which are banks rubbed semicircularly by mammoths who carried off tons of earth plastered on their hides to shield them from flies. The reader can imagine how hastily he would look around for a tall tree when one of these monsters, maddened by pestiferous stinging and tickling and tormenting flies, came charging down the trail towards him. The wicked flee when no man pursues would sure have roused the worst passions in any old American mammoth, especially if the ever wicked one nipped his testicles or his backside. Indeed, one of these scooped out banks done by the old mammoth bulldozer looks like the side of a hill from which 100,000 loads of soil have been rubbed away, hard by the wallows and the hill bones and whole skeletons of mammoths bemired in marsh and old swamps have been found. Authors of the Victorian 19th century and the far days before the skeptics and cynics of the 20th century had retorted on old spade beards who pompously pronounced that such a thing was so with "it damned well is not so," were very apt to talk as though the mammoth and the mastodon were carnivorous. In point of fact, these monsters, like the modern elephant and the horse, are herbivores and would not give a thanky for the primus cut from the stern end of 10-ton Buster Bella of any old English circus. Professor Winchell of Michigan found bones of mastodons and mammoths, as well as those of the ancient American Elephas primigenius, or woolly and hairy mammoth, embedded in peat bogs so shallow that he felt certain the ancient North American men were their contemporaries. All right, this too is suggested by such ancient American artifacts as tobacco, pipes, carved on bowl or stamped with the image of the elephant or mammoth. A mass of leaves, branches, sedges, and rush common in Virginia has been found in the stomach of a mammoth dug up 6 feet below ground in Pennsylvania. Indeed, bug cutters excavating the bed of the modern canal near Covington, Fountain County, Indiana, found a mastodon skeleton embedded in peat, and they split open the large bones and greased their boots with his ancient marrow. Right. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're enjoying the reading. We're in chapter 6 of the book Secret Cities of Old South America, talking about all these monstrous beasts, stories of them in the Americas. That the mastodon as well as the mammoth was attacked by ancient Americans was shown by a discovery made in 1846 by Dr. Koch at St. Louis in the bottom land of the Bourbous River, Missouri. He found remains of a mastodon sunk under its own weight in the bed of ancient marsh, the Gasconade swamp. It had fallen on its side as it struggled to regain its feet when ancient men who had brought from a long way off rocks weighing 25 pounds hurled the boulders upon it. There was no stone nearer than the river, 400 yards away, and 150 pieces of limestone rock from 3 to 25 pounds in weight lay around the spot, in ashes of old fires lit in a ring round the bemired monster by the ancient hunters. The heaps of ancient cinders reached 6 feet high. Koch said he found the fore and hind legs standing in a perpendicular position, suggesting that the monster had been bemired. In Brinton County, Missouri, Koch also found under the thigh bone of a mastodon an ancient arrow of pink quartz, crystal arrows. And a little farther away were other arrows that had been shot at the mastodon. He also found a mummy mastodon in a swamp in Missouri, a mummy, and said that the monster was capable of feeding itself with its 4 feet in the manner of the beaver. He was laughed at, but the Scientific American for January 1892 recorded the find of a mastodon of Newburgh, New York, with 4 legs that could be thrown over low foliage or brushwood. All right, you guys hear that? And a crushing affected by the somewhat expanded manus distal segment of the forelimb, a different type of elephant. You guys hear what they're saying? No such movement is possible to the elephants. The Newburgh monster was just beneath the soil in a pool of water. Stephen D. peat found in Ohio around 1888, mastodon bones mixed with ashes of fire, arrowheads, and stone weapons. The monster had also been bemired or bemired, is that, I don't know how you say that word, in peat beds and attacked by prehistoric men. Davenport Academy, Iowa, has two pipes shaped like a mastodon or an elephant, which were found by a German parson Blummer in the depths of a mound in Louisa County, Iowa. I've shown these guys. I've shown these artifacts. A second finely carved elephant pipe was found in a cornfield by an Iowa farmer named Myers who lived near Davenport. Other folk have found human artifacts mixed with mastodon bones, as Dr. Holmes, who in 1859 told the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Science that he found pottery fragments on the Ashley River, South Carolina, lying by the bones of an extinct megatherium and a mastodon. Implements and weapons found on such sites sometimes go back as E.C. Berthoud suggested in 1891 to the Tertiary Age. Tertiary man in America, for they are totally unlike those of the Red Indians or the more ancient mound builders. He thought the mammoth and the mastodon were in North America long before the glacial period, and in a cave at Dordogne, France, mastodon images are found carved on bones by prehistoric artists. It has been supposed that the apparently inexhaustible quantity of huge bones near a spring in the ravine of a forest in Boone County, Kentucky, and called the Bone Lick, denotes that in a far day these huge monsters were caught when a great cataclysm opened up the earth and engulfed them all. How old these remains may be, and the extreme antiquity of the ancient men who lived at those times was suggested by the remarkable discovery made by folk exploring the famous Mammoth Cave, Kentucky, in 1815. In a recess of the labyrinthine cavern, there was found a female mummy with features delicately chiseled and all the signs of youth. One story was the body was petrified with the nitrate drippings and that she must have been lost in the great caves, wandering in the terrifying darkness till she fell down and died. I believe the mummy is now in the Cincinnati Museum. You guys hear that? I think we got that report in one of the newspaper videos we've done of the old newspaper reports. The last find so far as one knows was made by a miner, C.W. Bowler, hunting for silica near Kimmswick, Missouri, in 1891 when he lit on many mastodon bones mixed with pottery. All right, all these elephants living with humans basically is what they're trying to tell you. The woolly mammoth possesses a long curved tusk not found in the mastodon, and that both were known to very ancient man in Europe, as in Asia is shown by the vivid and spirited drawing of a mammoth done by a Paleolithic artist many thousands of years ago. In Magdalenian times, on a cave wall at Combarales near Les Izes in the Pyrenean France, also the long extinct woolly rhinoceros with the two horns appears in another spirited drawing by Magdalenian artists, perhaps as long back as 80,000 years ago, high up on the wall of a rock fissure at Fond de Goume near the same Izes. I have dealt at some length with mammoth and mastodon because of the many people who assert these animals died out in North America long before the days of the ancestors of the Red Indians. Now we must pass on to other queer monsters of the great American wilderness. Farther north at Nanaimo, British Columbia, near the river mouth is a horizontal rock carved by prehistoric man with figures of various monsters like lizards and wolves, but with numerous appendages on the vertebral ridges that are unknown in any living animals of these species. These curious images were photographed and reproduced in plaster casts by Harlan I. Smith Expedition of the American Museum of Natural History, New York, and published in the annual report of that institution in 1898. Among them is a petroglyph of a sea serpent called the Hyetlik, or lightning snake. He is something more than a merely symbolical picture. The same monster also appears entwined round a totem pole at Cloyoquot on the west coast near Vancouver, British Columbia. The head of this striking totem pole is that of a very handsome and regal sort of man wearing a coronet and of the same type of features as one finds associated with Atlantean figures. In some of the Mayan statuary and caryatides, here it is probably intended as an emblem of the great cataclysm that sank old Atlantis and brought hell on earth to ancient American races, as one has shown elsewhere in this book. But as I have hinted, the Hyatlik actually swam and was seen in modern times in the North American seas. The unpublished journal of supercargo of the ship Columbia, written in 1791, and winter quarters at Clayoquot tells us that on a hunting expedition, an Indian saw a frightful monster near the shore. He was shaped like an alligator. The Indians said it was a sea serpent and very scarce. It was a long creature with a huge mouth. They offered 20 sea otter skins for a specimen, for if they should have but the least piece of this monster in their boat, they were sure to kill it well, as it ensures success at all times. All right, here's a little drawing. Today, saurians of veritable, the sea serpent type, but quite unknown to marine biologists, are said to exist in the region of the mysterious Monstrous Mountains, known as also as the Gold Range, where in the eastern British Columbia, the River Columbia takes its rise. As the poet Bryan said of the River Oregon or Columbia, this monster in the Barcan wilderness rolls and hears no sound save his own dashings, come from the umbrageous woods. On the west of the Monstrous Range, even now, but little explored is Lake Okanagan, where is the home of the Inukmeep tribe of the Okanagan Indians. Only a few months ago, I had a letter from a man who had read a book of mine on mysterious South America, and who assured me he had seen something queer in the waters of this lake. He says that the Indians have age-old traditions about the existence in Lake Okanagan and on the Monstrous Mountains of giant prehistoric reptiles. All right, and they are still very much alive today. The Indians know nothing about geological theories of the life of the Mesozoic age and the monstrous beasts of the Cretaceous seas, but they describe monstrous reptiles that are singularly like dinosaurs and prehistoric marine saurians, huh? Dinosaurs or saurians, huh? Or are we just talking about dragons, dracons, different types? One of these Indians not long ago drew on a bit of wood a picture of one of these saurians. But in August 1933, the great Okanagan monster got into the headlines of a newspaper far away in Ottawa and Toronto, and even in old London, England. The Indian believed he had died because he had not been seen for a long time. Then lo, one morning he suddenly appeared all of a foaming and a blowing in the waters of Lake Okanagan. These waters are very deep. He was said to have the head of a sheep and body of a prodigious size and girth, huh? Head of a sheep, yep. Sounds like a dracon. Leviathan, huh? The Indians further said he appears but once a year, and when he does, he signalizes his appearance with a noise like the explosions of the engine of a motor launch. Huh. The trumpets, huh? Sounding the trumpets, huh? The stories import the monster is a unique specimen of a freshwater saurian of the sea serpent type, for he is said to have snout of canine appearance and very large head appendages like the flapping ears of an African elephant, huh? Oh, it sounds like a dracon for sure. 3 people said they saw the monster and that they guessed he was more than 30 feet long. They further said he rose to the surface close to the shore, nodded his flappers, and then submerged. He rose again, and then was no more seen. A white hunter was told by the Indians that the monster was called the Ogopo. It had been the theme of numerous stories told around the campfire and in the wigwams. A venerable Inukmeep Indian said, "I am 90 years old. I heard my grandfather tell of this monster when I was a little boy. He is called the Auk. I remember that when I was 10 years old, I saw a bone 18 inches long and 12 inches wide that had come from the Ogopo's back. Years ago, a splendid deer was hunted into the lake and was suddenly dragged down by something unseen. The waters boiled like a cauldron. A white man and an Indian were surrounded in their canoe by a school of these monsters at play. I saw one of them shoot a fountain of water into the air, and it jetted more than 50 feet into the air above the lake, right? Clearly here we have the very rare case in these annals of monsters, supposed by many to be extinct, which import that they have fathers and monsters, or sorry, and mothers, sisters and brothers, and do not live alone in Baku. It seems that folk at Peachland, British Columbia say they caught a glimpse of the Ogopo one day in 1932. All right. So, I mean, you guys know about these stories just like the Loch Ness Monster, right? So it says one can but suggest that marine biologists, who must be found in Canada as in other lands, should do something more than the old shellback of whole England, who one summer morning in 1928 peered over the bulwarks and drew back quickly, and with a violent seafaring oath swore that if he saw any more of them, leading sea serpents in the North Sea, he would give up the sea and go on a farm. They should make tracks for Lake Okanagan and try to net one of these monsters. The cause of science demands it, gentlemen. All right. They're trying to trap him. Good luck with that. Right. Also, I'm reminded of Pyramid Lake, right? Remember Pyramid Lake? We read the book. It had its own little sea serpent monster, right? But one of the most amazing testimonies of the existence of unknown monsters in North America occurs in the cavern of the Glyphs in Ohio, 20 miles below the mouth of the Wabash. It is a cave and a rock just above the river at flood water. In the days of the early settlements in Ohio, this remarkable cave was the rendezvous of a notorious gang of outlawed Kentuckians called Wilson's Gang. Wilson, the chieftain, brought his family to the cave and fitted it up as a dwelling. He set up a sign on the water side which read, Wilson's Liquor Vault and House of Entertainment. Then he organized a band of robbers and hijackers and planned to waylay and assassinate crews of boats stopping at this tavern. In due time, Nemesis overtook the gang. They were rounded up, and the strange cave was entered and found to be 12 rods long and at 5 wide. But what more concerns us here was that this cave was found to have been the former home and religious center of a very ancient and unknown race. The floor was as flat as that of a medieval cathedral in Old England. All right, listen. And its sides rose in stony grades, much in the manner of seats in the theater pit. On the walls were well-drawn figures of unknown animals and hieroglyphics. All right, or hieroglyphs. You guys hear? Beyond and above this main cavern lay another, even more gloomy one, joined from the main cavern by a passage with an opening of around 14 feet, ascending which was like passing up a chimney. Far above rose a mountain. Some time after the robbers had been routed and dispersed, searchers in the upper cavern came on 60 skeletons, supposed to be those of men murdered by Wilson's gang, though they might have been the remains of prehistoric men. Nothing at any rate in that data available conflicts with this latter theory. On the walls of the lower or main cave were remarkable images. The sun was depicted in various phases of rising and setting. The moon was shown in its lunations and phases. There were ancient pictures of a viper and a vulture. Buzzards were shown tearing out the heart of a prostrate man, recalling the ways of a paranoid old Aztec priest. A panther was held by the ears by a child. There also appeared a crocodile, trees, shrubs, a fox, a curious hydra-headed serpent, 2 doves, bears, 2 scorpions, an eagle, an owl, quails, and pictures of animals of species unknown. 3 of these 8 animals were said to be like elephants, except that either the tusk and tail were different or were missing. It is thus difficult to say whether or not they were mammoths or mastodons. 2 others were like tigers. One was like a wild boar, tigers, jaguars. Another was like a sloth, and the last looked like a curious sort of quadrumane rather than a quadruped, the claws being alike before and behind, and it was shown in the act of conveying something to the mouth, located in the center of the monster. There were also fine representations of men and women clothed and not naked, and quite unlike North American Indians. They were, in strange fact, dressed in the manner of classic Greece and Rome. Listen, dressed like what? Like ancient Greeks and Romans? These so-called Indians on the wall right here in this cave. The America's a true old world, right? There was also a glyph of a snake biting its tail in an orb or circle. This glyph is also found in ancient Mexico, being the ancient cosmic symbol of the rotation of the earth and planets, thus the hijack, the evolution of creatures and of matter, and implying that the world feeds on itself and receives from itself renewal, refreshment, and renovation. The ancient Greeks so symbolized the revolving year, and it was known also in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt. The hydra-headed serpent suggests the Gorgons or a type of Amazon fighting women of the ancient world, and it is probably linked with the lost continent of Hyperborea that is here, or Iri Atlantis, Iri Atlantis, that's here. All of that's connected to all the Americas, ancient Americas, referred to in an earlier chapter of this book. The old myths of Echidna, the monster born of Chrysaor, son of Medusa by Neptune, and of Callitho, the daughter of the Atlantean Oceanidus, of the Hydra, of Chimera, and the Sphinx, monsters born of Echidna and Typhoon, the Atlantean giant Typhoon. Remember, all this was based on real historical people or geographical locations in America. We've broken that down. Who is identical with the old Mexican god of winds, just like the old, yes, because it is the same. The identical, huh? Identical. The same. It is the same. Of winds and water deluge. Typhoon all link up with the drowned land of Hyperborean Atlantis. The hydra-headed monsters probably symbolizes the great snakes and reptiles whose skins were worn by the fighting women called the Gorgonian Amazons, and whose ancient lands such monsters pullulated in the woods and great marshes of a very lush and warm day in the northern hemisphere. The kingship of these American ancients who left these amazing glyphs in this amazing cavern of the Wabash in Ohio, all right, in Ohio with old Irie Atlantis, whose American colonies may have extended to this region of the Ohio and the Mississippi, is further suggested by the details of the dress of the men of these people, as depicted in the cavern. They wear a rich, antique cloak, like the old Roman carbassus, have a sobucula, or waistcoat, breeches open at the knees, like those in old Rome called the suparum, are shod in sandals or soles, tied across the toes and heels, and have the head encircled by a bandeau tied with feathers. All right, you guys hearing how they were drawn? America's a true old world. The women in these Wabash cave glyphs are depicted with a Hellenic cast of face. Hellenic. What does that mean? The hair girdled by a coronet and confined with a bodkin. Hellenistic, Hermetism, Hellenism. That's not a race. That's not like a phenotype. So they're trying to say maybe they look like Greeks, but what do the ancient so-called Greeks look like? And remember, all Greeks are not the same. The rest of the costume in a Roman-like style, with stola or a toga, Buddha, flounced from the shoulders to the ground. These flounces singularly recall the dress of the mysterious Minoan race, seen on frescoes at Knossos in Crete, all right? Just like the Minoans. I told you where the Minoans really coming from. Huh? We've gone over this. Or kind of camisole. They're said to come from Atlantis. Or confined under the breast by a cestus or sewn. The women are shown wearing sandals. The monstrous quadrumanis of these glyphs recalls the queer fact that in 1892 relics called Paleolithic were found in Ohio. These extremely ancient relics represented two species of quadrumana or four-handed monsters, Elephas, Primigenius ursus, the bear's ancestor, bison, opossums, and a great cat, all of them apparently found in ancient antediluvian America. They're not supposed to be living with humans, but they're depicted there. You guys understand? Many of these ancient artifacts were found on the surface where the gravel crops out and in the boulder clay, in the river gravel, and in the glacial drift. Near these relics was also found in the boulder clay a broken tusk, perhaps belonging to some monstrous animal hurled to the ground by fallen rocks thrown forth by Ignatius Donnelly's disintegrating comet. Drakon, what's a comet? What you mean, comet? One theory was that the tusk belonged to Foster's Castoroides ohioensis, or giant beaver, also a molar of Elephas americana. So you see how I got the Ohio name as a species of this giant beaver because it was only found in the Americas, the true old world, true the oldest land. Also a molar of Elephas americana, ancient American elephant, came from the river gravel and may have been washed out of glacial drift. These remarkable relics showed no signs that they had any utilitarian purpose, and even flint nodules found there had been flaked into animal forms. The Wabash cavern glyphs should be compared with a remarkable discovery made in a cavern and a coal mine in the Pas de Calais, France, about January 1884. Here, 6 fossilized human bodies were found with remains of arms and utensils in petrified wood and stone. A second cave for 11 giant human bodies, animals, and even precious stones. The walls of this cave were decorated with pictures of combat between giant men and beasts of gigantic size. The evidence of these remarkable petroglyphs and the stories in American myth and folklore concerning giant men and strange monsters who appear have reptile, as depicted in ancient statues and artifacts in Central and South America, as also the queer horned man pictograph in the rock at Alton, near Cahokia, Mississippi. He does not at all look as if he were wearing a mask, seem to have some light thrown on them so far as light can penetrate so dark a place in the past, by the ancient lore of East Africa, the strange life of the submerged Pacific continent of Old Mu. All right, that was connected to the Americas, and by ancient classic myths of all Greece and Rome. A most ancient colossal figure of a bearded head of a man of heroic size, his hair and beard painted blue and face red, was in 1887 found on top of the Acropolis in old Athens. The rest of the body was formed like that of a serpent, and the termination was a fish's tail. Some said he was a Triton. Triton, it will be remembered, in the ancient mythology was the son of Atlantean Neptune, all right? Atlantean Americas, or Poseidon, and as the white horse, or Lucipe, was one of the symbols of old Atlantis, ancient sculptors sometimes represented him as having the 4 parts of a horse, all right? Again, the horse, the ancient symbol of Atlantis, horses originated in America. Do you guys remember? All right, so it suits that, right? So with half the body of a man, half horse, half man. But here again, as in the case of old American relics, I may venture to ask if, in a far day, there were beings of this hybridized type on this queer planet of ours, on this weird queer. It is also very singular that in 1820, mastodons were reported to have been seen grazing near the snow line of some still unexplored peaks in the Andean cordilleras in modern Colombia, South America. And these wild regions are gigantic ruins, great paved roads, fissured by long past earthquakes, and hidden treasures of ancient gold and emeralds, showing signs of fine craftsmanship. There are also Indians who live in the rarefied air regions where no European man, right, European or Latin American could exist. These Indians are not affected by the socorroche or mountain sickness, which troubles most travelers on any of the mountain railroads in Ecuador or across the Cordilleras from the Andes to the plains of the Argentine. But the Colombian Indians keep their secrets. In this region, Captain Charles Stewart Cochrane, RN, reported that in 1820, someone saw through a telescope a herd of these great mastodons. All right, listen, grazing on the edge of a snow field. In 1820, they saw them, perhaps from fear of acquiring a reputation for travelers' tales. He did not say it was himself. He was one day passing near the small and remote village of Ubate, which is very close to the Pamocha de la Mesa, with its great cave caches of gold and emeralds made by a long dead and very ancient unknown red race, all right? Cave caches of gold and emeralds like they brought Father Crespi, right? Says Cochrane. We were told by Senor Flores that during the heavy rains, a stream of water passes through the Suta, yielding particularly fine emeralds, some larger than a pigeon's egg, brought down from the interior by the mounting torrent. We commenced preparations for my departure from Choco. In the evening, I rode on an excursion with the juez político, Señor Cerezo, Don Luis and Mons de la Roche, to a small hill commanding the town. When the evening being fine, we had a fine view of a ridge of mountains which divides this valley from the Pacific Ocean. The summit was entirely covered with snow. From a small chain of highlands close to this range of mountains, with a good glass, has been seen numbers of carnivores, elephants, feeding on the plains which skirt these frozen regions. Their enormous teeth have been occasionally seen, but no one has yet succeeded in killing one of these animals, or indeed in getting near them. There are great quantities of wild cattle in these plains, to kill which the Indians sometimes make excursions. This chain of mountains runs northeast and southwest. Wow. Reporting seeing elephants, Roman mastodons, right? Large animal elephants. South America. Cochrane, it may be noted, was not the only British writer who, at about this date, spoke of the existence of mastodons in the recesses of the Andean Cordilleras. John Rankin, who in 1827 published his historical researches concerning the conquest of Peru, says categorically that mastodons are still living in the Andes, and teeth shed by them have been found. It may be that future explorations of these lost worlds of South America may provide scientists with those zoological as well as archaeological and mineralogical surprises, which were not actually found in summer 1937 on the top of the Lost World Plateau along the Rio Colorado in the United States of America. If we live, we may see. If we do not, it may be noted that geologists and evolutionists have recently been confronted with the mystery of a lost world 12,000 feet up in the giant cordilleras of the eastern Andes. The scene of the mystery is close to the remote township of Tarija in Bolivia. Here's a valley of dry bones, an arid depth, the valley of dry bones and dry depth, arid depth, located close to ridges of mountains, on the other side of which lies the strange vast valley, strewn with rocks, covered with coarse grass and stunted shrubs, and fissured with ravines which traverse high bluffs. The place looks like the workshop of a nascent world. Nothing lives in this great valley, which is a geologist and paleontologist paradise. They called it the Valley of Giants. And they have reason for it. Around 15 million years ago, it says here, when South America was a large island, with the seabed newly risen to form a land bridge with North America, monstrous animals and dinosaurs, or dragons, such as the shell-backed Glyptodon colossal ground sloths, a 90-foot-long dinosaur, the Macrochinia, a camel-like creature with enormous tapering snout, a Rachus, a vast bird-like carnivore with a head the size of a horse, sounds like a dragon to me, a Boreaenia, carnivore as large as a big bear, and toxodons like hippopotami with huge tusks, began to migrate north across the land bridge from South America at the same time as a similar stream of monsters were seized with the urge to migrate southwards. The North American stream of monsters appears to have taken the trail first, and when the northbound South American monsters reached what is now Tarija, Bolivia, they passed down over what is now a 12,000-foot mountain into an immense valley. And this tremendous amphitheater, which even today has more the appearance of some lost dead world on Mars or the moon than our Earth, there happened what has never been explained. Both hordes died and left their bones in vast numbers. Scientists of the Field Museum of Natural History of Chicago do not believe that these monsters fought each other in a titanic pitched battle, disputing the right of way. No, the fossilized bones of both trains of monsters mingle over a vast area, and they are in a condition which appears to indicate that both sets of monsters died at the same time and from some unknown catastrophe of nature. One gargantuan dinosaur, whose bones were dug out of the hillside, had to be raised with Derek and Hazard. Nevertheless, with due respect to Professor Elmer S. Riggs, I venture to suggest the question, having in mind Fawcett's story of the huge recent tracks in a lake in that very region of South America, whether in fact all these monsters did die at that time. Huh, they're still walking around. In modern Colombia, on the Andean highlands, not far from Santa Fe de Bogota, is a strange and vast plain called the Giant's Field. Already mentioned in another connection in this book, it is covered with petrified bones of mastodons who must have been overtaken by a cataclysmic elevation of the shores and littoral of western South America, which created the Andes, or perhaps, more accurately, raised the mountains to their present immense height and rarefied air of the giant cordilleras. Before this catastrophe took place, these mastodons were feeding in the lush, warm plain near the Pacific. Their feeding grounds were raised to the ground clouds, their pastures withered, so that they died of starvation in rarefied heights, where to draw breath is a pain and almost a torture to those unused to them. It is computed that this sudden elevation of the land took place about 60,000 years ago, and as the giant's field is at the same height as the mysterious dead city of Tiwanaku, that city may be contemporary with the raising of the mighty Andes. In any case, a breathtaking glimpse into a world of incredibly ancient civilization, far transcending those of old Africa. All right, older, listen, far transcending those of old Africa, older than those of Africa or Europe, but perhaps not those of older Asia, but maybe not Asia, because these are Pan-Asian people, right? Of the pre-Himalayan age is here tantalizingly given. This is Asia. This is Asia Major, right? Asia Major. Hope you guys enjoying the reading. It says here in Ceará, state of Brazil, bones of mastodons of colossal girth have been found, one fossil tusk being more than a yard long, a likely region for the abode of a King Kong, right? Where a King Kong can live, the great ape of the fantasy of the late Edgar Wallace. And as we shall see presently, South America has a King Kong. Say what? And other interesting monsters, lasting over from the Mesozoic or Pleistocene ages, lies on the edge of British Empire territory in South America. It is a lost world located in an unexplored enclave round the mysterious Mount Ollantaytambo on the frontiers of Venezuela and northern Brazil, with British Guiana looming in the distance, all right? And this area right here, guys, they're talking about also Mount Roraima is right on this same area. That is a lost world, guys. There's things in there probably a lot of people don't know yet. A lot of species, animals, dens, caves, ruins, civilizations, all that. At the root of these ancient trees that are now mesas or mountains, right? Tablelands, they call them. So this is bordering all these countries in the thick, dense jungle. Mount Ollantaytambo will be found on no chorographical map of South America since it was not discovered till 1936. You guys hear that? It is 8,000 feet high and topped by a tableland. Thick jungle and reedy marsh and swampy lakes cut off the approaches, even as the terrible jungles of Guatemala and Yucatan bar off the path to many dead cities of ages long preceding even the Mayan culture. The only approach is by aeroplane, and in December in 1937, the United States Museum of Natural History sponsored such an expedition under the leadership of Dr. Tate. He reached Ciudad Bolivar on the Orinoco River in spring 1938 and planned to strike off from there into the mysterious region which ages ago was eroded from an ancient plateau of Mesozoic times. All right, eroded. You mean it was an ancient tree that was cut off? True. Dr. Tate did not expect to find any great apes or prehistoric saurians or dinosaurs, but he thought it likely that he would reap a great harvest of fossils, bones, and other paleontological remains. Unfortunately, the German and Italian dictators and international financiers arranged a general European bouleversement about that time so that I never found out what befell this expedition to the lost world of Ollantaytambo. Strange anthropoid apes are reported to have been discovered in the Peruvian Oriente e Montaña by Dr. De Luis in 1929 and were the subject of a learned article by Dr. Montandan in a scientific society's journal in Paris. If a story told me in Balboa in the Panama Canal Zone in 1927 has any truth in it, then explorers of the still unknown regions of southwestern Darien, all right, in Panama, less than 100 miles across the land bridge separating Colombia from Panama State, may sometimes spring another surprise on the world. This region is closed against explorers and prospectors, closed by the Darien Indians, who will not even allow the president of Panama State into their territories, all right? Death is the penalty for adventuring into Darien Mountains from the Caribbean or Colombian side. The goal of many adventurers in modern days, as in the days of the Spanish conquistadors, is a strange city of the dead called the Baiba, or the Habia, a golden temple, 30 leagues southward of Antigua, up the great river of Atrato and Darien Mountains. The city was set in an old British lower deck buccaneer's manuscript I have, to be lined with gold and governed by a theocratic company of strangely garbed priests who offered human sacrifice. That's the hijack. The conquistador of Peru, Don Francisco Pizarro, and the unfortunate Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who was beheaded by the cold-hearted, formal, and sadistic Pedrarias, first Spanish governor of Panama, a complete scoundrel, headed an expedition of mailed Castilians into these wild mountains. The Darien Indians took to the treetops in the rainy season and rained down stones on the heads of the hardy and valiant Spanish infanteria, whose shields bent under their force. The mail-coated Castilians thereupon cut down the trees. 3 Spanish expeditions attempted to reach this city of gold. In 1515, but natives divided into the river and overturned their boats, and great floods roared down the streambeds from the mountains and put paid to the Castilian account. Even Pizarro refused to go any farther or to take command, so Balboa went on alone, manfully sweating up the wooded mountains and forcing his intrepid way over the swollen streams, as the old English and French buccaneers and filibusters were to do a century after his date. Balboa said he actually reached the strange white stone city, but was forced to turn back, having been wounded in the face with a wooden sword and pierced with an arrow in his arm. Other Spanish historians say that no Spaniard has ever reached the dead city in these wild mountains. Now, the Baibia is, or was, the seat of the cult of Chia. Look at this, the Chia, huh? Olmec, like the Chia, like Olmec? Or the Western Chia of Asia, Chia, huh? The Western Chia, huh? The moon goddess who, said legend in Bogota, of the Muiscas of Colombia, the Nueva Granada of the old Spanish conquistadores, was the beautiful wife of Bochica, huh? Chia is the wife of Bochica or slash Quetzalcoatl, the man in black, huh? Who, as we have seen, bearded, he was bearded, and wearing long garments came over the mountains from the east, from Atlantean high Brazil, from Atlantis to the highlands of Bogota. The temple was said to be hidden at the bottom of a cavern in the wild mountains of Darien and concealed immense riches which the Spaniards were never able to find. Quien sabe? Someday some sun-dried leather-skinned adventurer may get out of the land of southwestern Darien with rude sketches of those mysterious ruins on plateau behind La Serranía del Sapo, whereon says rumor in Panama City are picture writings. They are somewhere in the Tule country of southwestern Panama. All right. There are also, it was whispered to me in Balboa, Panama Canal Zone, terraced pyramids in the jungles. All right. A dead city of unknown age, where a great reedy moat is haunted by great saurians, or monsters, lizards by great dragons, protected by dragons, huh? Who skate upright as they skim the surface of the duck-thrown backwaters, and in behind the Sambu ranges, a stone city in which strange men of a lost world live. Wow. The land of the monster saurians of unknown Darien resembles strangely that of the lost Brazilian highland cities of High Brazil, for it too is a country of unseen elusive so-called white Indians. They always got to add the white with blue eyes and auburn hair. All right. Oh yeah. Okay. It says it was behind the Sambu Ranges that one Tadeus O'Shea, an Irish-American adventurer and gold prospector, had an adventure with a remarkable and unknown type of anthropoid ape. The story of his adventure was told to me in Balboa by an Englishman who keeps a pulperia. That's a corner store. That's how we say corner stores here in Costa Rica. Pulperia. Wow, I never seen anybody else use that word. On whose walls hangs a 17th century canvas portrait of the celebrated buccaneer. Sir Henry, then Captain Morgan, there is very good reason to suspect that that same giant ape may be found in recesses of the Oriente of Ecuador today. A giant ape, huh? King Kong. O'Shea had spent some time in the Darien Mountains among a tribe of Indians said to use arts of very black necromancy. They were old women and younger, who were said to have a power of Circe over captured white men or European men, and a story ran around that somewhere where in the wooded hills were two deserters from the United States Army in the Panama Canal Zone, whom these women could make go round on hands and knees, barking like dogs and chattering like monkeys. Wow. Getting out of the country where no doubt Tadeos had exhausted his welcome, he and a pal hired or stole a passage on a banana-carrying lugger sailing across the Bahia de San Miguel to Puerto Pinas. It was just after the end of the rainy season of 1920 that Tadeos O'Shea and friends found themselves paddling up the Rio Sambu, considerably beyond the banana plantations. They had great difficulty in reaching, sorry, the headwaters of this river, where they separated. The other man was never afterwards heard of, and must be presumed one of the numerous victims to this strange land's gods. O'Shea got overset in his canoe and lost all his gear and food. Nothing for it but to turn back on his trail and make for the nearest settlement on the wooded coast of the Bahia de San Miguel. Tadeus broke a way through thick woods and staggered along the banks of rushing streams, which led him gradually downwards from the saddleback ridge of the Serranía del Sapo, which is drained by the Rio Sambu. There is much virgin gold in this unknown country, if only a man might live to get it out. One day, worn down with hunger and fatigue, he reached the top of the divide, where he stumbled around till he lit on a half-rotten Indian dugout canoe. Breaking sticks off some overhanging trees, he fashioned two paddles and then went down the lonely stream till he fetched up in the Rio de las Dos Bocas, which runs southward to Puerto Pinas on the Pacific coast of Panama, Darien. Oh, Odalis, that's what's up. Okay, I'm reading the chat, guys. They use it, pulperia. It must be indigenous. That's what I was thinking already. These indigenous words that we call slang. We think it's just local slang, but these are, I'm finding out a lot of them are indigenous words, you know, that we share. That's cool. I didn't know other countries actually called, you know, because I know in Dominican Republic, right, they say bodega, la bodega, you know, in Boston, they didn't call it pulperia, but yeah, maybe in Dominican Republic they do. But thanks for that side note. Sorry to interrupt, guys. It says one night in a ravine on the top of a rugged, wooded cliff in the range, he went to sleep in a hut he had fashioned from leaves and boughs. All round in the far spreading forest, howler monkeys screamed and the cicadas whistled like the siren of a small steamboat. About midnight, he started out a troubled sleep and sat up on his elbow in his heap of dried leaves. He listened hard. There was only the night wind, eerily falling on the trees of the lonely forest, like waves on a sleeping islet's shore in mid-Pacific. Must have fancied something or dreamt it, he grumbled, and was settling back in his bed of leaves when outside the hut there came the sound of some large creature lumbering around and snuffing and wheezing like a heavy railroad freight engine ascending a gradient in mountains. Tadeus reached for his lignum vitae club, but having no gun, that is rifle, decided to lie still and make no sound. Minutes passed and the sound, whatever it was caused by, passed away. Tadeus fell asleep and in the morning had a good look around the wooded glen. He found no tracks, but big bushes had been trampled down and boughs of trees torn up and cast on the ground. He climbed a ridge crowned by bushes and was reaching a clump of wild bananas when he started back. A big bush was shoved aside, and to use his own terms, the very devil himself peered out, and no holy water to sprinkle him with. A monstrous black man, all of 10 feet in height, huh? A monstrous black man, that's what he's saying, standing erect, covered with thick black hair, glared and gibbered at him in rage. It raised hairy arms and seemed about starting a charge down on it Tadeus when he remembered that he had in his belt a revolver with one cartridge saved for just such an emergency. He slipped it from his holster, drew a bead on the monster, and toppled him over just as he was about to make a rush. The monster screamed and fell over dead. It was a lucky shot, and surely Tadeus must have had his patron saint well on the lookout that previous night and the next morning to be able to drop such a monster with a single revolver shot. So, are we talking about like a Bigfoot? Is that what he's talking about? As soon as he recovered from his fright, Tadeus took a piece of string from his poke and measured that old black devil. He had the chest of a Congo gorilla and the fangs of a sacred red baboon of Arabia and Abyssinia. But what made Tadeus start back and cross himself with an invocation of the Blessed Virgin and all the saints in glory were the monster's feet? They were human. Yeah, it sounds like a Bigfoot here, right? They were big toes like those of a man, and not opposed thumbs like those of an ape. He was a missing link. Tadeus reached Pinos Bay many weeks later and got aboard a coast steamer which landed him at Balboa, where he was sent to a hospital. Before dismissing this story as a traveler's tale, let us look back. It is known that about the year 1640, a Spanish gold hunting expedition in the region of this very Pinos Bay of the southwest coast of Darien reported shooting 14 of these monstrous anthropoids. Indeed, Indians all the way from Nicaragua to Ecuador swear that great apes of this sort live on the slopes of jungle-covered mountains, all right, into which no Indian will venture alone, even in the broad, hot sunshine of the day. All right, we're talking about our tropical Bigfoots in the jungles of Central and South America. Is that what we're talking about here? When the Spanish conquistadors started to explore Peru and the Andes in the first half of the 16th century, they heard queer stories of large anthropoid apes in Peru. Cieza de León, the old soldier monk, tells what he heard in his Crónica del Perú. But as even writers in the none too fastidious 18th century never translated this curious passage about the bad customs of the Indians who live in this interior of the montaña of the Andes of Peru, I hear for the first time in English give the translation for its curious and scientific interest. All right, he translated it for us. Let's see what they're saying in these primary sources, right? It says, they also say, for I have not seen them, that very large female apes, listen, walk and run in the trees, where by temptation of the devil, who at all time lies in wait, man may commit great and deadly sins and use the apes as women. What? They're having relations with these ape women, listen, and they affirm that these apes sometimes give birth to monsters with the heads and private parts, miembros deshonestos, of men, with the hands and feet of apes. Also, they have little bodies of monstrous shape and hairy. Indeed, if they speak the truth, they resemble the devil, their father. They tell more that the monsters have no speech, save a dreadful howl or moan. It pains me greatly that such things may be possible. In 1549, I went to Los Charcos to see the provinces and cities they have there, and begged the President Gasca to give me letters of introduction to all the corregidores or provincial mayors that they might aid me to explore the most notable of the provinces. One night I chanced to sleep in a tent with a nobleman, Hidalgo, resident in Malaga, by name Don Inigo Lopez de Nunsilva, who mentioned that a Spaniard who there lived had with his own eyes seen in the montaña or the mountain one of these monsters lying dead, of the shape already mentioned. And Juan de Vargas, who dwelt in the city of La Paz, told me that in Guanuco, Indians told him they had heard the howling of these devils or apes. So is the repute of the sin committed by these evil fortuned people. I have heard that Francisco de Almendras, who resided in La Plata, caught an Indian woman and a dog in the act of committing this sin. Wow. Oh my gosh. And commanded the Indian woman to be burned. And besides all this, I was told by Lopez de Mendieta and Juan de Ortiz or Sarete and other residents of the town of La Plata that in the province of Aulaga, an Indian woman by a dog conceived and gave birth to 3 or 4 monsters who lived only a few days. You guys hear what they're saying here? Oh man, cynocephalic, human headed dog, human heads. What we talking about here? Yeah, so that was the account supposedly from the primary source, right? Translated. So it says here the passage reminds one of the warning in the Pentateuchal book of Leviticus, um, 18:24. For in all these things the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you. Old races have passed away from this very ancient world we call the New World. Dr. Montande knows that in Yucatan today are statues resembling gorillas. They were found at Teccox and are now in the Archaeological and Historical Museum in Merida. The statues depict anthropoids of powerful physique, and one of them seems to be bisexual, recalling the peculiarities of the sexual organs of an ape shot in 1929 by Dr. De Lois in South America. It may be that in the days of ancient and decadent civilizations in Central and South America, as in the times of the Welter or Semitic and non-Semitic races who peopled the land of the pre-Diluvian and post-Diluvian Mediterranean and the shores and land of Canaan and what we call the Levant, there are periods when nature or the unknown power behind the universe, which the old Brahmins called Dayos, tired of the human race, Dios, tired of the human race as it seems to be evoluting, turns against mankind and seems blindly to grope to put something else in his place. Ancient myths say there have been such periods in the remote past. However, I do not wish to vex or bore the reader with Shavian warnings. Let us pass on to another curious phase of this subject. Curious phase of this subject. Says I have been told that the Peruvian authorities have had to pass a law compelling arrieros, muleteers, to take their women with them, owing to the syphilis derived from the llama, who seems to be a carrier of it. It is not known generally that the Inca Peruvians were dying out of a race from the ravages of this disease when the Spanish conquistadores arrived. A singular and attested case of comparatively modern sexual relations between Brazilian Indian women and monkeys is recorded by the Brazilian historian Noronha. Oh man, this is getting weird now, huh, guys? Who says he believed it. It relates to the Indians of the Tapia nation of Rio Urua, Amazonas, who are said to have a tail like that of an ape or large monkey of the Coata species. The story is told in a certificate attested by Fray Padre José de Santa Teresa Ribeira, missioner of Castro de Aveloes, on 15th October 1768, concerning a strange Indian that had a tail and came down the Rio Apuro. Fray José de Santa Teresa Ribeira, misionario de Orden de Nuestra Señor de Monte de Carno, right? That being a mission of the ancient aldea of Baruari, afterwards called, as today, the Nagueira, they arrived in the said aldea in the year 1751 or 1752, an Indian called Manuel de Silva, native of Pernambuco, or of Bahia, who came from the Rio Japura, were certain redeemed Indians, among which were brought a savage infidel Indian of 30 years more or less, of whom the said Manuel de Silva certified me that he had a tail, and for that I gave no credit to so extraordinary a novelty. He ordered the Indian to be summoned and made him take off his clothing under pretext of taking some tortoises from a stream where I kept them. whereby in this way I could examine into the truth of what he said, without being able to have any deceit put on me. The said Indian had a tail of the thickness of a thumb, or great toe, and of the length of a half a palm of the hand, covered with a shell, or husk cairo leso without hairs. And the same Manuel de Silva assured me that the Indian told him that every month he cut the tail so that it should not grow too long, after which it grew again. It did not inquire the nation of the Indian, nor the region where he lived, nor if any other or most of the Indians of his nation had a tail. However, 4 years ago, more or less, there came to me news that the Rio Jurua has a nation of Indians with tails. Wow. And for that all this is true, I have here set my signature and seal from Castro de Avelos, 15 de Otumubro, 1768, Fray Jose de Santa Teresa Ribera. The wild gauchos who herd wilder cattle on the edge of the Mato Grosso in the province of Goiás, Brazil, know more about the region of the Brazilian highlands and the vast wilderness of the region of the the wilderness of the Great Forest, which is the English of Mato Grosso, than any other folk. I remember a chat I had with a Goiás gaucho in that town called Bahia for short, but to which the old Portuguese founders gave the sonorous name of Bahia de São Salvador de Todos os Santos Bahia, or Bay of our Holy Savior of all the saints. This one time dreaded Yellow Jack City, the nightmare of the old windjammer sailor and of the later day of the British screw and propeller steamers of the 1890s and 1900s, is today a curious mixture of the modern and the Churigudisk church and monastery bells by the hundred ring and tang from dawn till dusk, and in fiesta times all night long. Ketelby and the late King George V would have been a home here. It is a town of the most Christian Catholic sort, where many old convents dating from the far-off day of the old Franciscan and Jesuit missioner, of the age when a Borgia pope grandiosely ruled a line across a map. The dominions of the most Christian king, Dom Emmanuel of Lisboa, trans the lands of the most Christian and Catholic king of our Lord Don Felipe, and the palace of the old Escurial in Madrid. Cutting into the sound of the Catholic bells is the clank of the electric tram and the Hong Kong of the American automobile. The picturesque and unhealthy lower town of narrow streets, just as they were in the 16th century, is a huddle of houses with warm, eaten rafters, rotting and rotten beams, and places with open sewers, no sanitation, and open drains. Sambos with glistening skins and gaudy cotton clothes stroll past bronze mulattresses with fine torsos and graceful figures that many a European woman would envy. Their snowy headdresses and brilliant down, though at night the frosty streets of the lower town are lit with dim and dirty oil lamps. However, the city fathers are, bit by bit, cleaning up their town. They plan to bring health and sanitation to its port, where the harbors and docks are being enlarged and modernized. The lower faubourgs of Bahia are joined to the upper town with the electric elevators and the dawn of a newer age in an old city. Okay, so I think this was written in like in the 1940s or 1930s. So this is what he's talking about his time. I met the Guacho in the bar of a hotel, which, like many South American places of entertainment of the tourist track of the capital cities, both on the east and west coast, is perhaps fitter for bazaar ladies, as they say in India, than for European ladies of the most straight-laced and respectable sort. The Gaucho, after drinking all a tall glass of the potent caña, showed his teeth and a smile and assured me that only the Gauchos knew this region and how to take good care of themselves in it. Senor, said he, too many Englishmen have gone into the wilderness on the trail of lost gold mines, mines of platinum and diamond rivers, and have left their bones there. I found at death's door out there one day when I was hunting for a lost cow, an Englishman who had stepped off a cattle boat in Sao Paulo and tramped his way up a country to Goiás. He had a map on dirty sheep skin made by some monk about 250 years ago, which was said to show where there was a lost platinum mine, worked in the days of the Jesuit missionaries and abandoned by those fathers when they had to quit the country in a hurry. Indios Bravos, or what you call it? Uh, Bravos means like tough, savage, tough, mean, track down men for days and keep themselves out of sight as they move noiselessly through the chapada. The wing of a poisoned arrow is the first token you get of their presence. It is also the last, por Dios. Oh my God. The Mato Grosso had an evil lure for Ciro Forasteros. Some demon seems to be always drawing him onto destruction. The gold and platinum mines are often in caves thousands of years old, it seems. I've never entered one. Vampire bats that suck the life out of men and horses are there, and quicksands that embog even the wild horses. There is a devil tree, there as big as a willow. It hides its branches deep in the earth, but if you go near it, the branches creep up from the soil. The tendrils curl over and catch you in their grip. If you are alone, you will never free yourself till it has sucked the life out of your body. It will capture even a wild steer in this way. Even bees in this land of southern Brazil forsake their habits of storing up honey in hives. I knew a fellow who started a bee farm in Goiás and imported bees from Italy. In 2 years, they stopped storing honey because they could get all the nectar they wanted from the ever-blooming flowers. And in sugar regions, Senor, the bees won't be at the trouble of sucking flowers where cane is being refined. In these central Brazilian jungles live a queer, lost world bird called the huaxin, or by ornithologists Opisthocommus cristatus. It too is an ancient world denizen of the Mato Grosso. This queer bird, barred with an olive white plumage and tipped with yellow on the tail feathers, would fit in well with a forest composed of monkey tree puzzles araucaria. It haunts low bushes near lakes where it builds bulky nests. So eerie is its ancient world appearance that one is not surprised to find that the huaxin is a direct descendant of an extinct bird reptile, Archaeopteryx lithopatica, bird reptile, huh? Of which a fossil specimen was a few years back dug out of a quarry in Germany. Hardly any wonder that explorers who see this weird bird in the Cantinga of the Mato Grosso are disposed to agree that there may be other mysteries of lost worlds behind the screen of the jungle and beyond the belt of wild savages when such a Mesozoic bird hovers on its fringes. Nor are prehistoric portents of this kind confined to a modern Brazil. Years ago, Charles Darwin in The Voyage of the Beagle came on traces of a prehistoric animal of great size which may have been used as a beast of burden by the original inhabitants of what is now Patagonia. The present natives are a miserable, dirty, and starved race of stunned folk, but so large were these beasts that only giants could have handled them. It was in a cave in the fjord of Ultima Speranza that came on the bones of these giant beasts, Mylodons. The cave had been used as a stable for their was cut grass dried along with balls of dung containing part digested grass ejected by monsters kept for haulage or store stock. Senor Julio de Moura, writing a doctoral thesis on American Man, advanced the theory in 1899 that in Argentina and Patagonia, where ancient habitations had been found by Amenyo in 1868 made of the breast of dorsal bones of the Glyptodontes, these dwellings at the latest cannot be of post-Neolithic times. But what is the Huaxin compared with the unknown monsters of the Rio Araguaia in the still unexplored territory of the Mato Grosso woods and unfriendly Chapada? All right, what is it? And we're gonna probably end it right there, guys. We've been here an hour and about 36 minutes, hour and a half. This book got at least another 20, 25, 30 pages, so we're probably gonna do a part 3. Again, try not to make the videos too long so people can actually sit down and watch them. And also I can give you your time back. All right, and absorb everything we just read. Again, make sure to catch, part 1 of this reading, the previous pages. If you didn't catch that, that was about 5 days ago. All right, and again, this was part 2. We're gonna have a part 3. Pretty amazing stories, whether true or not, pretty amazing stories, but I myself personally, right, as my opinion, I believe a lot of these stories. Can I prove them? Probably not, but again, we're allowed to discuss this stuff too sometimes and theorize, right? And it's just so many stories, and not just from here in this book, but from many oral traditions that we know of, research we've done. Many ancient people say the same thing. Many people, when they go in the wilderness, they talk about these things. So it's to me very interesting. Very interesting, actually, reading. Hope you guys enjoying so far this chapter. Hope it's not boring for you guys at all, you know. But again, we're gonna leave it there. This was chapter 6. We're continuing reading of the book Secret Cities of Old South America. And this was part 2. This was part 2. Monstrous Beasts of the Unexplored Swamps and Wilds. All right, we're gonna continue on the next installment of this chapter reading. I hope you guys again enjoyed it. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Really appreciate you guys taking the time, out of your day to hear me read, even for this long. Hope it wasn't too boring. Okay, not boring. All right, thank you. To me, it's very interesting reading this stuff. I want to get to the other reading. I'm like, wow, this is a long chapter, but I probably would have read it on my own without even noticing how long it was. Just reading it into. I'm like, wow. Following up on the research, again, they quoted a lot of primary sources. They quoted a lot of sources. They're quoting a lot of stories. They're also giving you some, oral traditions, but pretty interesting in general. There's probably a lot of truth to it, There's probably a lot of truth to it, But that's why I put this on my other playlist as well. History or myth, you decide, right? History or myth, right? But we know why not? Why couldn't there be still mastodons or these creatures that we don't know, dragon-like or Ice Age-like creatures still around? Prehistoric creatures or animals. Why not? Why not? But thank you. Appreciate you guys. You're very welcome. Thank you. Shout out to all my supporters. All right. Check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support. Or you could also join the channel as a member. Some exclusive videos there, some more private videos. All right. I plan to do as well. Pura vida, yeah, pura vida. Word of the day, right? Pulperia. Now we know. Pulperia, corner store. That's how we say corner store here in Costa Rica. Pulperia. Yeah. Much love and respect. All right. Pura vida, mi gente. I'll see you soon. Pura vida. Much love, Take care, be blessed. Hawa blessings, Hawa blessings, Hawa blessings. Yeah, yeah. Wow.